Hello pedal nerds and welcome to another review video of mine. This time I'm having a look at the Fazy Cream by Sonicake. If you're new to this channel and haven't seen any of my content before, I previously did a pedal review for the cabinet simulator from Sonicake, and this time they've sent me another pedal, which is the Fazy Cream. It's pitched as a kind of like cheap alternative rival to the Big Muff. Well, that's kind of my interpretation of it. The big kind of grabbing point for this is that it's actually a very affordable pedal, kind of clocking in at around $30. If you ask me, that's in and of itself at least worth a go. So that's what we're going to be having a look today. I'm going to be going through all the kind of noises that I can get out of it so that you have an informed decision at least as to if you want to go for this pedal or not. So let's talk about the pedal before we kind of start playing with it and listening to it. So it's another kind of tiny pedal from Sonicake as the one I'd looked at before. So it's one of those pedals that you can really fit on any board. It's really non-intrusive. Yeah, it will fit really well even if you've got quite a packed board already, unless you're using every square centimetre. This has still got a space and a place on your board if you want it. The material, solid metal, you know, plasticky kind of knobs, but you know, that's not unique to just this pedal. Loads of other pedals have not brilliant but still really, you know, sturdy enough controls. Unless you're stomping on it, you're not really going to break it. And the only issue is with the kind of small pedals like this that I find a bit fiddly. It's never a deal breaker at all, but it's the tiny controls for what is the you probably won't be able to see this, but as you can probably see there, the camera will not autofocus, but around here are the little controls for the level and the tone. They're fine for kind of, you know, tiny fine adjustments where you're not really going to touch them afterwards because they're so small. You're going to get much traction with them, but they feel quite breakable. And if you try and use your foot to change the controls on the fly, which is what I do, where you'd be controlling this on the fly with your foot if you're so dexterous, at least in the back of your mind, you might be thinking, I'm going to break this controller, the pedal's going to be useless. But considering the tiny compact nature of this pedal, I can't really hold it against it. It's just a bit of a peeve that I have. I'm going to break the pedal by stepping on it. The build quality, as I said before, is really solid, really well put together. The button is a really great clicky thing. Really solid overall. Mainly one control to worry about, which is of course the fuzz or the gain. I don't really know how in the circuitry what the gain, where the fuzz kind of control is in the stage and how it's affecting things really. But you know, we'll find out as we're gonna put some sounds through it. We're gonna listen to the pedal. It's gonna make some noise. Let's just go with that. The guitar I'm going to be using for at least this part of the demonstration is my Manson MA Evo from about 2015. It's kind of, at this point, it's quite old in terms of from the offerings that Manson are doing, but it's one of my favourite guitars that I have. It sounds great. Later on, if we switch to two guitars, I will kind of tell you what I will be doing, what I'll be playing with. And to get things started, this is the clean channel we're playing with. So let's kick on the fuzz. Okay, so here we go. So low gain, all on the guitar, everything's up, the tone is up, the volume is up, the bridge pickup is engaged. What do we got? I just had to check that the gain is all the way down because it sounds still quite hot. Let's just A/B between this and the clean channel. We can just see what I'm kind of dealing with here. The clean channel does have a bit of bite. There's a bit of gain in the amp settings in the simulator that I'm using. So that's why it might have a little bit of extra bite and a bit of extra crunch, but there's something definitely in there, even at the lowest gain setting where it's really kind of pushing it hot. It's very warm, very creamy. Then I guess that's where the name comes from. Okay, let's pump it up to 9 o'clock. Go up to 12. Let's crank it up to 3 o'clock. And then let's just crank it all the way up. So what's it offering? Pretty interesting. Let's now take the gain back to 12 o'clock and I'm going to take all the tone out. Because why not? So what do we have with this? I'm imagining with the tone all the way down with a fuzz pedal, it's going to sound quite guitar from the next room kind of. So let's just see what we have. Definitely very muffled. It's not taking out too much. I mean, I'm just going to turn up my monitoring a bit so that maybe I can pick out a little bit more, but it won't change for you, hopefully. Okay, let's ramp up the tone to 12 o'clock. Straight away, there's a dramatic difference in there. So somewhere between all the way down and 12, the circuit is really coming in. It sounds pretty decent at 12. I feel a bit uncomfortable playing with pedals at 12 o'clock on any setting because it feels quite, standard, as though it's kind of not doing anything. But if it sounds great, it sounds great. And let's be ridiculous, take the tone up to about 3 o'clock. There again, straight away there, that really bright, really harsh, not desperately nice to listen to. This is still with the gain at 12 o'clock, so maybe let's take the gain down to nothing. So we've got the gain at 0, well, its version of 0, which is a little bit bitey, but then the tone at about 3, so what's that doing? I guess with the lower gain, it doesn't have enough drive to get quite harsh, so with maybe there's a rule of thumb in there, the more tone in there, then the less gain that you want for it to not sound terrible. Let's be ridiculous, tone all the way up and keep the gain down at a minimum, but then we'll turn it up. So here we have the tone all the way up and gain all the way down still. Okay, even without upping the gain at all, it does definitely sound a bit harsh. So let's just keep going with that. Let's turn the gain up. Gain is at now about 10 o'clock. Same riff again. Up that gain even more. 3 o'clock. You can tell the battery's going in this. Interesting. Maybe it's not overly dangerous and daft and harsh, but let's just take it to extremes. So we've now got the tone all the way up and the gain all the way up. What do we have with this? Let's just be ridiculous and add some low octave with a whammy pedal in there. So earlier I said that this pedal kind of is trying to be like a cheap alternative to a Big Muff. It's pitched as a kind of like cheap alternative rival to the Big Muff. Well, that's kind of my interpretation of it. See, I did say that, technically. So what we're going to do now is have a shootout between the Fazy Cream and the Big Muff. I'm just going to A-B between the pedals, and really it's going to be up to you if you think it's comparable. I'm not going to say kind of, you know, bear in mind it's a completely different brand, completely different type of pedal. It's, you know, cheaper than a Big Muff and so on. Really, it's up to you. Do what your brain tells you to do. I think that this is a worthwhile and fun experiment. So I'm going to kick off with the Fazy Cream, obviously, and then we're going to swap over to the Big Muff. I'm going to play the same riff each time we play a thing, as long as I can remember what the riff is, and then really it's just going to be up to you what we think. I'll give you my thoughts of it afterwards, but in the meantime, let's just kick off. So that was the first run through so far, completely up to you if you think they're comparable, one's better than the other. I mean, really with sound, to me, everyone experiences it differently, and it's completely up to you what you think of it. It's all subjective. As long as you find a tone that you enjoy doing, go for it. I'm going to swap guitars. I'm going to go from my Manson to my Telly. So we've gone from my Manson to my Telly, and it's really good. Mainly I've gone for this because it's got a fabulous P90 in the bridge. Bonus riff, I guess, in clean. So with the Telly, the Fazy Cream sounds like this. What about the other? What I'm going to do now is take all of the gain, well actually the fuzz out of the Fazy Cream and the sustain out of the Big Muff, because that's the drive section, I guess, for those. Take them all the way down, and I'm going to comparatively raise them up, but from 0 to 12 to max, just to make it easy, because we've already kind of been through that stage of the Fazy Cream. But now this is a direct comparison of the two pedals. Maybe there's a bit more value in having that extra deep dive in there. So all the way to 0, both pedals. For full transparency, the tone control for the Fazy Cream is at 2 o'clock, and the tone circuit in the Big Muff is off, and that won't change. I'm going to keep those exactly the same. So the only difference we're going to be hearing incrementally is the more gain stage. So as always, we're going to start with the Fazy Cream and see what that does. Okay, great, let's up it to 12. Okay, I'm definitely getting the feeling that the Big Muff is making more of a fuller type kind of sound. That's your own interpretation of what fuller means, but there's a lot more body going on in there to my ear. Crank it up all the way. I think that was a bit unfair at the end. I kind of A-B'd between the two of them quite quickly, without telling you what they were, which one was on. What I will say is that we finished on the Big Muff, and if you can hear the switches in there and you want to go back and listen to it in more detail, maybe you can pick out where the switches happened. So my thoughts for the Fazy Cream by Sonicake as a direct comparison to the Big Muff. In certain circumstances, the differences really are quite dramatic. They both sound different at certain things. When you take the volume down from the guitar on the Fazy Cream, it cleans up quite well, whereas if you take the volume down on the guitar, obviously with a Big Muff, but no one really uses a Big Muff for that, so let's move on with that. Direct comparison, blasting the gain with both of the pedals. To my ear, there is some difference. You can really quite, it's quite obvious and you can tell. It's not very subtle, but it's not overly dramatic. But then taking it back from full gain stuff, well, let's look at the direct comparison we made of the pedal when we went from 0 all the way up. The ramp up of the gain is really quite dramatic. At the beginning there's still quite a lot of gain even with nothing in there. Coupling that up with low gain, high tone, get some interesting sounds out of that. It might sound a bit like Wasp in the Jar, so you really want to dial in that tone control quite well. But what I found with kind of moderate gain settings with the Fazy Cream, with the tone at 12 o'clock, that kind of, or 12 o'clock maybe leaning towards 1 o'clock. I've got some sounds that I actually really enjoy playing with, but the big thing that's kind of really weighing over my mind is that the Big Muff offers a lot more body and full kind of power and strength behind it. And really that to me with the Fazy Cream is a bit of a deal breaker, but that's only because that's what I go for a Big Muff with that. As a sound in and of itself, the Fazy Cream I think is a really good pedal, and keeping in mind it is at $30 or this price. It's a really good pedal for what it is. It's fairly inexpensive or affordable. Certainly it's a very affordable pedal. Really fun to play with. For a beginner guitarist or someone who's looking into gear for the first time, I would strongly suggest this is a contender for your early beginner board. So it gets my stamp of approval. So it's now time for my verdict, the end of the video verdict on if this pedal's any good, so let's give it a go. So, the Fazy Cream by Sonicake, is it any good? Well, it's trying to be an affordable alternative or entry-level pedal for a fuzz tone for people who like the sound of a Big Muff. It gets there quite well. It's not quite got the full body that you're looking for, but if you are a beginner guitarist, you don't really listen out for that stuff. You just want something that's gonna, try to blow your head off. And this little pedal can do that. It's not the best, it's definitely not the best, but it's not the worst. It's not the worst fuzz I've ever heard. So, is it any good? Well, yes it is.